Let's start with orienting everyone. When you log into Schoology, you see this menu up at the top. Today, we are going to be looking primarily at the courses area. The courses area is really your main area in Schoology if you are a teacher. This is where you can grade and give assignments, lead class discussions, give out badges, things like that. The other area in Schoology is the group area. This is more of a collaborative space. So when you think of your academic world, many of us just think of our courses and our students, the classes we teach, but there are all those other things that encompass school life. Clubs, athletics, the arts, even the meetings that you have as a teacher. And finally, the resources area in Schoology. Resources are where you can store everything in Schoology, whether you're teaching or not. Think of it like the Schoology Dropbox or Drive, Google Drive, something like that. It's your digital filing cabinet. You have a filing cabinet in your classroom. Resources are your filing cabinet in the cloud. To get started, we're going to break this apart for both basic users and enterprise users. Basic users are going to go into Schoology, click the courses drop-down, and select Create. After that, you'll be prompted to enter your course name and section name, subject area, and level. Now, the first concept you'll want to know, if you're unfamiliar with this terminology, is the difference between a course and a section. Courses are the main subject. So for instance, Algebra 2 would be a course. The section represents the various times you are teaching that. So your classes, if you're teaching Algebra 2 3 times, you're going to have 3 sections of Algebra 2. So as a best practice, you create a section for every group of students that you are teaching. So if we break that down here, I'm going to look at my basic account, click the courses drop-down, select Create, and fill out this form, and you will get your first course. And I have mine here. You'll note that this crown indicates that you're the teacher of the course. Eventually, we'll see that our students will see the courses in the same manner from that drop-down. Now, for enterprise teachers, we're already connected to your student information system. You do not need to go through that process of creating courses because we connect to your student information system and we simply load all of your courses. Not only that, we load your rosters as well. So your courses and your rosters should be set up for you. Now, the only exception here to that is for specials. So your enrichment courses like music and art, sometimes those are either not in the student information system or they're represented differently. Many people who teach arts might create their own courses. You'll even see coaches create their own courses similar to the basic version, even if they're using Enterprise. The other place where you'll see people create their own courses are elementary school students. For instance, according to your SIS, your students may all be in different course sections, or rather you may have a different course section for every subject that you teach in elementary school, early elementary school, but it's really your homeroom. So you, instead of using 5 courses, one for ELA, one for math, one for geometry, etc., instead of using all different courses, you might want to use one course. In that case, you can simply select a single course to use. Make it simple for your learners. But as soon as you start doing more work and have separate periods and groups of students, we recommend always use different sections like I have here. I have 3 sections of social sciences. Your first step is going to be to update your profile pic. Now this may seem like just something nice and graphic to do. It's always nice to have that, but this actually serves a really nice purpose. Once you have several courses, it's much easier to differentiate those courses if they have different pictures, okay? So simply click that button and upload a file. If you're looking for a good source of images, a nice copyright-free stock site is Pixabay. Always important to be conscious of copyright materials when you're putting content into the cloud. Okay, so you should have a course, and notice that the image now shows. Let's just pause here and see if there are any questions.
Yeah, we've had a couple of interesting questions coming in. One big picture question is you've mentioned the difference between an enterprise or a basic account a couple times. You've referenced it, but what really is the difference between a basic or enterprise account? How can you tell which one you have, etc.?
That's a great question. The basic account in Schoology, if you simply go to Schoology.com and create your own account, you're going to be in a basic account, meaning it's a free account that is teacher by teacher. The enterprise version of Schoology often has different branding. I'll show you that here. Let me bring that up. So in a basic account, you'll see that basic tag there. That means it's the free version. In the enterprise account, often you will not see this banner this way you see it today. You'll see it with your school's branding, probably replacing the Schoology logo with your mascot or your school seal. The enterprise version of Schoology is purchased by a district or an organization, so it can be managed centrally. So you're able to do things like have your IT group load your courses for you and load your rosters for you and keep all that data up to date.
Great. Another question, Rebecca's logging in from an iPad. She says it looks a little different. Are there any big high-level differences between the app and the website that you're displaying on the screen right now?
That is a great question. The app was originally built for students, to consume learning. Now you can do all sorts of other great things on the app, like grade papers and things like that. And we're going to be focusing a lot on the app on our session on the 18th. When you're creating courses, it's best to create them on the web using the browser. The tools to create the items that we'll see today are best used on the web. You have more features available to you as a course designer from the web. But if you're just grading on the go, trying to stay connected to students, having your students respond and submit work, mobile application is excellent.
Speaking of the other sessions coming up, just real quickly, Michelle was wondering about communicating with parents using groups in Schoology. She sees those headings at the top. That's another topic we're going to cover in one of our upcoming webinars.
That's right. On the webinar on the 18th, we'll get into using resources and groups, and we'll touch on parents as well.
Great.
It's going to be chock full of great little tips. And then we'll also build on some more advanced tips beyond what you'll see today. So first step, create your courses or find courses that are already created for you and add your profile pictures. Now, one of the big things with the enterprise version of Schoology is because your courses are all loaded for you, they may be in an illogical order because they were just loaded in the order that they appear in the database. when you get your courses or as you're creating them, the best thing you can do is reorder them right away for yourself. This is done on an individual basis. You'll probably want to teach this technique to your students as well. Notice my courses are a little out of whack here. My social science courses are split up. So we'll select this up and down arrow, and now reorder those courses. There we go. Now navigating the system is much more simple. So now that we have our course shell, we have our nice image set, our first steps are to get organized. What do we do first? My mantra, especially for all of the self-proclaimed novices on this session, my mantra for bringing in technology is that it's a change that happens over time. It's not a single event. It's not just this training. Don't try to figure out everything at once and use every feature at once. Find one or two features that really make an impact both to you and your students and provide some change and get into that. If you get really deeply into one or two features, then the rest of the system becomes easier and easier. But if you try to knock off everything at once, it can be a challenge, a steep hill to climb that's not necessary. So our first step is to get organized. In your course, click the Add Materials drop-down and add a folder. Let's look at my course that's already completed. Notice how I have folders organized here. Clicking this arrow, I can expand these folders so I can see my subfolders divided into various topics. And then finally, I have activities within those folders. Folder organization is really your first step and your first big decision to make. So click Add Materials and Add Folder. I'll do that from a blank course here. Add Materials, Add Folder. Now you'll see I'm creating a folder called Unit 1 Inventions. Why am I making this decision here as my first level of organization? Well, let's look at our slides here. Depending on your audience and what you teach, you may organize folders differently. For instance, this would be an example of a young elementary school setup. I may simply have a folder of past activities, future activities, and then I'll pull my current activity actually outside of the folder to the top. When we add items, which we'll do next, we can put those in folders, drag them out, drag them back, reorder them, etc. So for your youngest learners, you want as few clicks as possible. So my folders might be for me to archive past materials and plan future materials. Notice that that future item is hidden. Looking at Schoology, here from the availability dropdown, I can make my folders hidden or visible. A key concept is to only hide future folders while letting past items that you've already taught, keep those visible. Keeping them visible will retain grades in the gradebook, as we'll see later. Some prefer to organize their folders by weeks. Others by units. Especially with secondary education, I find organizing by units to be the best. One reason for that is while weeks do seem logical, your weeks could change. Week 1, week 2 might change if you get snow days or flood days or anything like that. Anything that might disrupt the calendar could disrupt your week organization. While units are more modular. You can move them around, you can make more decisions with them, adjust on the fly. Next, we're going to look at our options for adding things and adding files, basically sharing that content in the cloud. Before we look at adding items, do we have any questions about that basic folder structure?
We have a couple questions from Rosina and Alicia about whether or not students are going to see all those folders. I think you had an example up there that maybe you could hide a folder.
Absolutely. So let's look at the folder that I was creating here. At the bottom, this availability setting allows me to make it hidden or visible. When it is hidden, you'll see that it's grayed out. Only you or a co-teacher will be able to see this folder. Your students will not see it at all. Now, how do we know that? This course drop-down option is very powerful here. One of the options allows you to view your course as a student. So, for instance, if I view this course as Logan, note that Logan does not see any materials. So as you're planning your Schoology course after this training today, you may make a folder hidden first and organize your materials in that until you're ready to release it to your students so they don't work ahead.
Another quick question on if you're able to change folders once you've made it. Can you edit anything in there? How do you edit in Schoology?
Great question. The key to everything Schoology is looking for a gear icon on the page. As long as you are the teacher of the course, basically the course administrator, you should look at the gear icon and edit. And this goes for everything that we'll see today. And this brings up my settings. So for instance, now I can edit this folder and change the title or add a description. Anything else?
A couple people are concerned that maybe their school's going enterprise, but they currently have a basic account. Are the materials going to come into their enterprise account if their school upgrades?
Really interesting question. So because all of Schoology is in the cloud, it's nicely woven together and nicely connected. When you switch from basic to enterprise, our implementation team goes through an exercise to merge your data together. The key to doing that is in your settings, in these account settings here, make sure you're using your school email address and not your Gmail address, or change that to your school email address. Using your school email address will allow our implementation team to merge your account into an enterprise setup. Great. So let's look at our options for adding materials. I see this as 4 options, okay? Again, from the Add Materials menu, you can simply add files or links. Doing it this way, adding files this way is great for sharing a presentation, just sharing something simple to get to have students access it. For instance, if you want all the students to access a link during a study period or for a reference later, easy enough to create folders and add files and links there. Simple sharing. However, there's a really nice way to do that I want to show you. Okay, a nice shortcut. You'll notice in this image, we're clicking a green line within our folders. Let's look at that in real life. So I have this Unit 1 folder here. If I add files right here, those files will be added to the bottom of this course. And really what I want is for this file to be inside of this folder. So there's a better way to do this. Clicking the gear icon, I'm going to delete that presentation. Instead, select that caret icon next to the folder, hover your mouse within the folder, and you should see this green dotted line. Select that and you'll get that same menu that's available from the Add Materials dropdown. However, this menu will add it right in the correct order that you desire, right in the folder or subfolder. So now I can click File again and add my presentation here. Notice now this is neatly kept within that folder. To see that in a full course setup, note that I can even do that within subfolders, add any content right where I want it, making sure things are in the right order from the get-go. So there are a few navigation tips here that we've included. Expanding those folders using the caret instead of clicking directly on the folder, this allows you to have a bird's eye view of your course. Any items within the folder, you can actually drag and drop and reorder. Just click and hold an item and you can move it within the folder, or actually move it between folders. And finally, hover between items and click the green dotted line to add new items. Those are tips that will really allow you to get the most out of Schoology and be the most efficient and work the fastest. Okay, so we've added a new item within the folder. Now I mentioned that this is really for presentations, for simple distribution, when you want something to just go to the students in one direction. What happens when you want to add context, want to add instructions, or if you want your students, more importantly, to get that material back to you? Let's say it's a handout. In this case, instead we'll want to add those items to existing items in Schoology. So when you create an assignment, a test, a discussion, or a page, okay, after the name of the item and the description, where you're adding context, you can add folders below using these buttons. So this is an example of an assignment where I'm giving context and then I'm handing out what would normally be something on paper, but instead I'm attaching it to the assignment. Let's see that in action. So again, in that folder, I'm going to use my shortcut here, clicking the green arrow, and here I'm going to add an assignment. This is our first really interactive piece in Schoology that we're looking at. Assignments are used usually for homework. Anytime you're assigning work to students where the work is done by individual students, where you'll be, in most cases, expecting some kind of response. Okay? And here is our description. I prefer putting all of the descriptions, the full description for the homework here, and then clicking this button, we can add a file. When you do this, your students will be able to download that file, make their own copy, and send it back to you. We're going to look at the settings down here in a few moments in the next session. Now I have this assignment ready to go for my students. So the question is, where are your materials now? Are they on a hard drive? Are they in the cloud already, in Google Drive, something like that? Let's put up a poll here, Julianne, and get some feedback. As those results are coming in, a lot of you are already using the cloud to some extent. Many people using Google Drive and Microsoft 365. Great, and the votes are slowing down, so I'm going to close that poll and share it out. Okay, so I'm glad to see that so many of you are already using cloud services like Google Drive, Microsoft 365. Typo in our poll there. And some of you are actually even using Schoology resources, which will be a big topic on the 18th. Great. So for those of you using the cloud, there's another option here as well. Again, when we created that assignment, there are several buttons along the bottom. The third one allows you to access your resources where you can connect to Google Drive. Let's take a look. So in this STARS account here, in the resources dropdown, you'll notice that there is this apps option. In the intro today, we talked about how resources are your digital filing cabinet, but in the cloud. Now, you may have already embraced that idea by putting a lot of your content in the cloud. We can access that area directly from our assignment. So again, clicking that universal gear icon, click the Edit option. And now I'll select this third option, Resources. Our Apps area, this is what we're looking for here. I've already installed Google Drive. If you haven't, you'll be prompted to install it in most cases. And the enterprise version of Schoology, most IT directors will have already installed this for the entire organization. And here is a Google Doc. Clicking the gear icon, I can import this as a file, link, or private link. If you want to stay in the Google universe or this 365 universe, the import link option is the best one. Okay? This will allow students to make their own copy of this worksheet. So this is the one in probably 80% of all cases you'll want. And now I've added a link to my worksheet that's already in the cloud. Okay. Again, that is from the resource area where your apps are. So I encourage you after this to check out the apps and install any that you are using in your course already. Finally, our last option is a special one for all of especially the art teachers and music teachers in the room, media albums. Media albums are really specifically for images, audio, and video files. It allows you to create a nice display of thumbnails of all of these options. And what's interesting about media albums is that you can allow students to add files to these as well. So you can really make nice displays of student-centered activities with those media albums. And that is this option here. Add materials, add media album. Okay, and again, you can allow students to add or not add items to the media album. So when you create that, this is the button that allows students to add media or not. By default, this is on. So by default, students can add media as well. So best practices, Julianne, we want to add folders. We want to sequence and organize our course logically. And remember, we can always reorder that. We can drag and drop any of those materials or those folders. We can reorder that to make sure that the current items are up top. Add files directly if it's just a presentation, but in many cases, especially in secondary school, you're going to be adding files to assignments and other Schoology items because you're going to want to add context. Connect to those other cloud services if you've already taken that first step and put your content in the cloud. And especially for very visual information, visual content, those media albums might provide a really nice palette for you. Our next section is going to be looking more at interactivity. Okay, so we're going to dive deeper beyond assignments and look at some other interactive items and those settings you can apply to those items to make them more useful and more clear to students. With just handling files, Julianne, do we have some common questions?
Actually, everyone was really excited when you showed them about the extra apps, the Google Drive app, the Dropbox app, pulling in from that. A lot of questions actually around how those features work. So a little bit will be covered in one of our upcoming sessions. We also have some other supporting resources in our Help Center or as a professional development offering if you do have an enterprise account.
Absolutely. Often when you do get Schoology Enterprise, part of the implementation is substantial professional development in which we go into great depth in those apps because, especially using Google Drive, there's almost nothing you can't do. I know that their motto is do no evil, but I think their motto could be there's nothing you can't do, especially with Schoology.
Also, everybody's getting pretty excited about learning about how to put content in Schoology. They're also thinking ahead to the fact they teach multiple classes and they are looking forward to learning how to share it. So I just wanted to let everybody know, I've kind of chatted in the text box here, but let you know that Bradley will be covering that at the end of today's webinar, so hang on tight and we'll get to best practices for sharing at the end.
Great. And great to see people sharing their screens. I love seeing all this learning happening, especially these ones that there's a lot of change. That's what every classroom looks like right now. Lots of boxes and tables moving around. So thanks for sharing those online. Okay, so let's continue forward. Engaging students. Before we talk about making more engaging materials, I want to give you some advice, some best practices for actually adding the students, especially for those of you on Schoology Basic. You're going to, like a lot of sites out there, you're going to share your course access code with your students to join on Basic. Now on Enterprise, your students should already be loaded and should be synced on a daily basis for you if student rosters change. But on the Basic account, you're going to be giving your students this access code. Now I'll explain this big red X in a second. When they join, they're going to take that access code, go to Schoology.com, click Sign Up, select Student, and they'll be prompted to enter the access code and their basic information. All right? Now, the trick with this, Julianne, is that our young learners are very tricky. When they sign up, I guarantee you that you will have some students forget their password. And while they can reset their password in Schoology, many a student simply go back to Schoology.com, use the same access code again, create another account, and before you know it, you might have 5 Joe Smiths in your course. And you don't want that, okay? So here's a tip to get started. First of all, they're going to keep reusing that access code because they can see it. Every time you bring Schoology up on your smartboard or on your projector, they're going to see that and just create new accounts. So after your students are in, click this X and remove that access code box. Now this didn't go away permanently. Click the Members area. This is where your student roster will be, and you can always get to your access code here. Another good idea is after your students are all in, reset that access code. This will ensure that students cannot use the past access code to get back into your class, okay? Now, when they do forget their password, on Basic, on Schoology Basic, this is my favorite tip. Click the gear icon next to the student's name in your members area, and you should see an option to change their password. You can manage that yourself. Okay? So I can't tell you how helpful that is. And when you do reset your password, your access code, note that that green box will come back, so you just remember to hide that again. Okay, numbers, change password. Now with Schoology Enterprise, almost all of you have Schoology connected to some sort of single sign-on mechanism, whether it's your Active Directory at the school, where you sign on to your school network, or your school Google accounts or Microsoft accounts. In those cases, you won't be able to change someone's password because it's managed centrally by your IT group. So however those students would change their password for all the other systems, that would be the same for changing your password in Schoology. It should be one password, one place for your whole organization. Okay, now that you know how to get your students in and understand the basics of sharing files, well, there are a lot of options here in this Add Materials list. Where do we start? I'm going to encourage all of you to, after you have folders, understand the basics of files, to get past these static items really fast. Folders, files, links, and pages simply allow you to curate material for your students. Now that is a huge gain. I don't want to minimize how important that is, but this is where things get exciting. Discussions, assignments, and test quizzes are items you can score in Schoology. They're things students can interact with online. This is what actually makes the course really engaging. Okay, so discussions, common uses, pre-post class discussions. One of the big constraints of a traditional school is that, well, you only have maybe 50 minutes per period with your students within your classroom. Putting those discussions online allows you to both break outside the walls of your classroom and also break out of the constraints of the 50 minutes you have to talk to those students in class. Putting those discussions online in Schoology will allow them to stay connected and discuss things for homework, preloading information, and getting their wheels turning before they come to class. Assignments, as I was mentioning in the previous section, common uses, paperless homework. Journals, multimedia projects, all sorts of options. Test quizzes. This is where you're going to be making entrance and exit tickets, diagnostic tests, check for understandings, formative assessments. These are where you'll find your multiple choice and true-false questions. They do automatically score themselves. We'll talk a little bit more about tests and quizzes in the future sessions. Today, I want to focus mostly on discussions. If you're looking for one thing to start with Schoology, one place to start, I encourage you to start with a discussion because it immediately adds value, okay? So how does it add value? Well, when students have a discussion online, what changes? How does that engagement change? And I'd like to see your answers in chat. I'm just going to read through them. We have some questions about moderation, which I'll talk about, but how do you think behavior changes? How do you think students engage differently if I write a question online versus if I simply ask my students a question in the classroom in which they have to raise their hands and speak aloud? Rosina uses the word empowerment, and several people have used the phrase or words that they might have a voice online that they don't have in the classroom. I'm thinking of all of our shy students. Your students that you know are brilliant but never speak. The students who you are just not sure of. You don't know what's going on in their mind, but if you put the question online, different things can happen, okay? So again, using that green dotted line I always promote using, click Add Discussion, and it's going to look really similar to what we just did. Okay, I'm going to go back to my sample materials here, open up this folder, and click the green dotted line, and I'll add a discussion. Now, one thing that I want my students to do in this example is we're going to be talking about inventions, and I want them to really feel the risk of inventions, feel that inventions are still something exciting and new. It's not just Thomas Edison and the light bulb, but it's exciting things like self-driving cars. Okay. And I encourage you, when you make a discussion, don't just simply ask a question. Follow the same processes that you would in class to get really substantive, juicy answers. If you simply ask a yes/no question, you're going to have a very boring discussion. Okay? Encourage debate. Ask questions that you know will solicit different responses, not just, quote-unquote, the correct response. Would you feel safe driving a self-driving car? Explain why. And then also add criteria for students to respond to each other, right? Because here you're stepping away. You're allowing them to discuss something with each other. Give them some guidelines. So here I'm asking them to respond to someone they agree with and strengthen their position, and respond to someone they disagree with, but cite the reasons for those positions. And always a good idea, as a best practice, to have guidelines for etiquette. Remind your students to be respectful. That is indeed a 21st century rule and practice. So what's missing here is the video. Now we'll cover some more advanced techniques later on, but I'm going to show you one of the best techniques to get you really far with Schoology. Now I'm just writing text. Let's take this up a level. I want to actually insert a video. This button here is going to be your best friend in the toolbar. All of these other formatting options should be pretty clear. You're going to have those in any word processor. But this is the one that's exciting, the ability to insert content. I want to insert this TED video. In almost any video you see out there, you should see a share button, a share link. And when you share things in Schoology, my goal here is to actually have this video play right within my course. I don't want my students going out to YouTube and then being distracted and showing each other cat videos. That's not my goal. That's not my end game. So we want to embed this video in Schoology. In YouTube, scroll down, and instead of the share link, select the embed link. This is going to give you some ugly code that you don't need to know anything about. That's the good news. You just need to copy it. Going back into Schoology, you put the cursor where we want the video, select Insert Content, add image and media from the web. Now, you'll see two options here. This is, I want you to pay attention here because this is the place a lot of people get tripped up. It's first asking you for an image from the web, but this is not an image, this is a video. So we need to select media. If anything, if you're adding video and it doesn't work, I guarantee you 99% of the time that will be the mistake. And you paste that code in, and you should see a yellow placeholder here. We can resize that video as well. Let's save it to view the results and take some questions from you all.
Real quick question with regards to the YouTube embed, or what happens if YouTube is blocked at their particular school district? Is it going to work in Schoology or not?
Great question. Schoology, as you can imagine, a platform like Schoology greatly respects privacy and any sort of firewalls or privacy settings a school has. Schoology will not bypass any firewall setup. Now, there are some really terrific resources out there to embed content from YouTube. YouTube actually allows people to create content, create whitelisted from their firewall, okay? So if YouTube is blocked, try to have a conversation with your IT group and let them know about, it's called YouTube for Schools, and that allows a school to whitelist videos to be used in Schoology and other platforms. There are also some other sites out there like SchoolTube and things like that are usually open that often have the same content. For instance, you can go to TED.com and get most of those videos as well. Now, one of the, before we move on to making this discussion even better, let's just break down what we just did, okay? Let me go back a couple of steps. We wanted a YouTube video. We looked for that embed link. We copied it. We don't need to know anything about that code. And then here are the steps. Click Insert Content, Image Media, from the web, and media, and add that content. And if you follow those steps, you should get something that looks like this, a nice discussion with a YouTube video embedded for your students to participate in. Now, how are they going to know when to do this discussion, when it's due, when any of the assignments or anything in Schoology is due? What about the communication piece here? Click the gear icon and let's look at the bottom of this page. You'll see this similarly in test quizzes and assignments. Adding a due date is the #1 thing you can do to empower students and set expectations and set communication. Simply adding a due date here adds that discussion now to the course calendar. If it's not hidden. Hiding folders and items always hides everything. So I just added a due date, but notice in my calendar here, the right column is our calendar. It won't show up. So let's say I have this ready to go, I have it all set, and now I want to release it. Clicking the gear icon on the folder will edit it again, and now let's make it visible. Here is a pro tip. Right now, this is just going to make the folder visible, but not everything inside it. Make sure to click that box. Make all folder contents visible. That's going to save you a lot of clicks down the road. Okay. Now we'll refresh, and we see that discussion is now listed in the calendar, and we can click directly into it. What's really nice about this is if we go home in Schoology, go to the home page, your students will also see that item right there. In fact, your students will see all of the upcoming items from all their courses on the home page. They have an automatic homework list as long as you add due dates. So always, what's one of the best things you can do as a peer is encourage your fellow teachers to add due dates to strengthen communication. Now let's connect what we've learned so far to understanding the gradebook. Note that in this discussion, under the due date, we have an option for grading. Click that box to enable grading. This is just the first step. The next step you have to take is to add this to a category. These are not categories just for organizational purposes. These are actually your gradebook categories, where you would normally add homework or, let's say, class participation. And this is also where you would add a scale, okay, whether it's pass-fail, A+-, things like that. That is the last step to that. So what does this look like? What does a graded discussion look like? Let's look at a finished example here. Oh, so wrong one. When a discussion is graded, you'll see this checkbox next to every post, and you can apply grades. And these comments here, these are comments for yourself about their grade, about the score you're giving them. Unless you check this box, then they will see that comment as well. Okay. And that's really the key to adding things to the gradebook. Enable grading, set a grade category, and set a scale. Okay. Now, as a best practice for all of these discussions and encouraging engagement, note that students can also, in the discussion posts, not only write text, but they can, again, add files just like you did earlier. They can add links. They can access their Google Drive or their Microsoft Drive. And in the enterprise version of Schoology, what's really exciting is you also have this microphone here. That allows students to open up their webcam and actually record a live video or audio post in the discussion. So think about what, for instance, a music teacher could do with discussions that are more audio-based. So I'll leave it at that, but that's where Schoology starts getting really creative. How do you put these features together to create a different kind of lesson that wasn't possible without using technology? Technology should not just be about efficiency, but it should really allow a different kind of instruction to take place. Okay? And here are those best practices that we just reviewed on the last slide as well. Now, our last two items, that's really the meat of this presentation. If you understand all of that, what we just covered, the last two items for managing your gradebook and managing common materials is pretty simple. Okay? As we talk about the next steps, and I hope all of your minds are really getting creative here and firing on all cylinders. Let's just hear what kind of discussions people are going to be diving into first. A lot of people are going with the back-to-school icebreaker. That's a great way to start. You know why I like that is because it's also really low risk. You can play around with discussions. You can try some things out. And I see a lot of people liked the video as well. Responding to a video. And those are our results. Okay, grading. Again, as we said earlier, assignments, tests, and discussions are things that you can grade. And they go into a Schoology gradebook. Wherever you score them, it goes right into the grid. So remember, we scored this discussion here, actually in the discussion itself, but those scores are automatically reflected in a traditional-looking gradebook.
Quick question from a couple of people in regards to how you can get these grades out of your Schoology gradebook and into another gradebook. If you have PowerSchool, is there an easy way to go about it? What if you don't?
Great question. For those grades, people on Schoology Enterprise, some people have integration set up, for instance, to sync their Schoology grades to the PowerSchool gradebook. Again, that's something we usually go through in implementation with enterprise users, to live sync grades across Schoology to SISs. And in the basic version, what you can experiment with is the ability to export grades. And that will export out into an Excel file, into a CSV file. Either you can grab your overall grades or individual grades.
Right. The takeaway basically is that you don't have to worry about just manually entering in each score into your other gradebook. You have a couple options, either with an enterprise account or with a manual account to get them out in bulk.
Absolutely. And the trick to that is really the setup process. So when you go into your gradebook, you should see this other option here, Grade Setup. And this is where we're going to set up categories, scales, etc. And I have them broken down here. Add your categories here. Add your grading scales here. The star will mark a default. I always suggest that because it'll preload that item for you. Just a time saver. If you've set up semesters and quarters, you can rate them. And you can manipulate how final grades are scored. What I'll point out is if Schoology is not your gradebook of record, many people hide students' overall grades from the student reports, so students and parents are not confused if everything isn't in Schoology. Okay? That's a really good number 7. Hide information from student reports. Very, very helpful. And again, wherever you are, you can score, and those items will go right into the gradebook. And one thing that is new this year is a new ability to add exceptions. So if a student didn't complete something, you can now click this flag icon and select excused, incomplete, or missing. Missing will count as a 0, while excused and incomplete will simply ignore the column until a grade is put in. Okay. And finally, troubleshooting, always good to know. You won't need this for a while, but if you are troubleshooting, clicking that menu option, selecting Bulk Edit, that's your way to look at all of the scored items throughout your Schoology course and verify if they are set up correctly. Okay? And it looks like a lot of people are already actually asking this about getting grades out, so I'll just skip that poll. You all can think about that. And we're a little over our time here, but we want to cover this last section about reusing materials that a lot of people have actually been asking about, which is great. There are 2 ways to reuse materials. One option is to click the gear icon next to a folder and select Copy to Courses. This will allow you to make duplicates of that material to other courses. So for instance, if I'm in this course and I want to copy this folder over, select the gear icon, Copy to Courses, and this will bring up the other courses that I'm teaching. Now when I do this, it duplicates the items, so I would have to make changes to the separate courses, for instance, if there is a typo. But it is still pretty fast and pretty efficient. The enterprise version of Schoology has something very unique, very interesting, which is the concept of linking sections together. Let's say that these two, period 2 and period 4, cover the same content, they're just different periods. In the enterprise version of Schoology, you can actually link those together. Select See All, and that will take you to your course management area. And there you see my 2 periods. Select the gear icon and link sections. What this is going to do is combine all of the materials from those sections while keeping my roster separate. Let's see what it looks like. Now, in the courses drop-down, if I refresh here, you'll see that period 1 and 2 are together. So any items I add here will automatically be shared to both periods. While going to my members area, note that I have it drop down so I can see my students from period 2 and 4 separately. And that's the case with your discussions, your assignments, etc. They will all be kept separate from the standpoint of submissions, while your materials stay locked together. Just when you add items, this area will look a little bit differently, because if you do need to customize things, note that by default all items go to all sections, but I could just share something with period 1 or only period 4. So linking your sections does not stop you from still personalizing items or having separate due dates for different course sections. And that's the absolute best way to manage those materials in the enterprise version of Schoology. And to wrap up here, Julianne, best practices with reusing materials: basic, you're using that gear icon and copying to courses. I would do that folder by folder instead of assignment by assignment. It's much more efficient that way. Enterprise, link the sections related to one course. Now, you can only link sections that are related to a single course. You can't completely separate courses. So I can't link my Algebra 2 course with my Geometry course. I can only link the sections of the Algebra 2 course that I'm teaching. And finally, you can use your resources to share materials as well, just like you're sharing materials in Google Drive and things like that. And I'm just going to leave that as a cliffhanger because on the 18th, we're going to dive more into resource management and more into sharing and collaborating in Schoology with others, okay? Now, Julianne, before we wrap up here,
I have one number one question that everybody wants to know. The one question everybody seems to want to know is, where can they find this webinar again? I know we mentioned at the very beginning, we have very busy educators on the line with us today. Some of them have had their emails up and all the way to meetings joined kind of late, and they want to know where they can get this later, and also about the slide deck. Is that available?
Great question. If you stay on the line a second, we're going to upload the slide deck for you, a PDF version of the slide deck, and you will all receive an email sometime after this. We'll check with our marketing team, but it should be within the next day or two, with a recording of this session, exactly as it is. And then once all of our Back to Schoology webinars are complete by the end of the month, we're actually going to take the best of and put them on YouTube. We'll take all the best of those webinars.
We're going to probably piece it together a little bit so you'll have little modules that you can actually incorporate into your own PD. If you're going to build out maybe a self-paced course for your teachers inside of Schoology, you can take these pieces of the webinar or maybe just the slide deck, pop it in there, and use Schoology to teach Schoology.
Absolutely. And I am uploading the slide deck right now in the
actual GoToMeeting.
Yeah, in the GoToWebinar panel, right where the questions are, you should see a section called Handouts. Let me know if you see that. And you should see a PDF of the slide deck in that handout area. Got it. Kelly, great. And I'll leave that up for a second. Thank you all for joining us. We'll leave the line open for a second so I can monitor some questions so all of you have a chance to download that slide deck. And if you have any remaining questions, let us know. Again, if you had a meetings happen, especially at this time of year in school, you can join us again at 4 o'clock as well. 4 o'clock Eastern Time, we'll be doing this same presentation.
Also, if you're looking for a little bit more information on something you learned today, if I wasn't able to get to one of your questions, I know some of you had questions about kind of like rolling over the school year, what to do with courses that you maybe started last year and now you're trying to figure out what to do with them this year.